Well, welcome you guys to another live stream here on the Sergeant Tank YouTube channel. My name is Jeremy. Thanks so much for joining us this morning on a short, somewhat impromptu live stream. So, figured today I would be discussing the importance of organizations within a fish room. It could be multiple fish rooms, it could be one fish room. But just kind of going through my own personal experiences from running many different fish rooms for many different years. What I have found to be the overall most effective way to really lay out, to accomplish, and that kind of stuff. So we'll give it a couple of minutes here and wait for a few more folks to join. If you want, feel free to go ahead and share it out. If you guys are new to the channel, welcome. Well, yeah, so we got Mike in the house. Hello. Select Pat. Hello. Probably won't get a very large turnout today, but that's okay. We shall see. I always like to give it just a couple of minutes, just so I'm not having to repeat a lot. Fish Tank Barn. Hello. So, just a quick background while you guys are waiting. We do, I've been dealing wholesale and direct to consumer since 2007 within the aquatic pet industry. So you guys can check us out at sergeanttank.com if you want to know more about who we are as a business. You can definitely check that out under the About section. So I'm not going to really be covering that today. So again, thank you for any new subscribers to the channel. I appreciate it. For any returning, followers of the channel, I definitely greatly appreciate that as well. So I'm here just to share my overall knowledge and hands-on actual experience just from doing this for so many years. So I figured try to create some topic that may be of interest. I've talked about this a lot in the past. However, just kind of designating, a live stream to you guys on this. As I'm just kind of getting back into the flow of the whole social media thing. And it's something that I enjoy because I find that it's very important. And yeah. Bonoski Tanks, hello. Royal Fish Aquatics, hello. Dank Tanks, hello. So yeah, and then once I get going, you guys, the way I like to do it, just kind of keep things flowing along. I'm going to kind of just go through different stuff and kind of break it up into segments. We'll stick right around an hour or so, and then if I have time at the end, then I'll be taking any questions. But I just want to make sure I get through this part. That's the way I typically like to do it. If I spend too much time focusing on questions in the chat, that may be even relevant or irrelevant to the actual topic. It's gonna get off quite a bit, and I just want to kind of stick to it. So that's the way we do things here on this channel. Might be a little bit different than others, but I just want to be able to provide as much insight as I can, because an hour, in all reality, of doing hundreds of these over the years, it really can be pretty time sensitive. Goes by a lot faster than what you would think. Let's see. Select Pet, I appreciate that very much. I really do. Yeah, once I get back to the flow of stuff, I do have plans in place of what I plan on doing. Kind of getting back to my roots with the whole YouTube thing, and be able to eventually get to a point where I'm ready to start actually putting out edited content for you guys. And then once I do that, I'll probably be scaling it back from doing live streams, because my time is very limited in what I have going on here. So I'm just trying to maximize as much of that time. And I'm sure a lot of you guys that have families and that type of thing can relate. On top of running a business and a fish room and all that stuff, it definitely have to really look at that time. Editing videos, of course, takes a lot of time, and I want to make sure whatever I'm putting out for you guys is going to be maximized the most on my end, but also for you guys as a consumer to that content, to try to bring some insight and a little bit more in-depth look at certain areas of what we do here within the fish rooms. But yeah, I mean, this topic here, I think, and I really hope that it can provide some insight to a few of you guys, and be able to take something away from it. But yeah. If you guys want, do me a favor. Right now, I'm not running on multiple. Lost my train of thought. Multiple platforms, so multi-streaming as far as like Instagram and Facebook. I will be incorporating that at some point here in the near future. I do plan on incorporating that so I can offer. If other people are on different types of platforms that might be more convenient for them. And then what I plan on doing down the road with a lot of this content is kind of what I used to do in the past as far as repurposing, is to incorporate into an actual like podcast. So if you want to listen to it through a podcasting service versus video, I know as a lot of us, if you're working in the fish room, that kind of stuff, if you already are into podcast and listen to podcasting, then I know, it's for those. It's not necessarily for everybody. So kind of mixing up here a little bit and provide both the visual concept as well as more of the audio. And I find more important for me when I'm trying to explain things and go through stuff in a little bit greater detail, the audio is more important for me to you guys than necessarily the video, especially when I'm covering these kind of stuff, because I'm not really showing you guys anything. Before I started this, I was trying to pull up and be able to pull bits and pieces from one of my presentations that I do on methodology, the overall fish keeping and fish breeding. And I just didn't have the time, unfortunately, to incorporate some of those slides for you guys. All right, so we're just going to go ahead and get to it. I'm just going to kind of start it from here, like I'm just starting this thing new. So again, my name is Jeremy with SergeantTank.com. I appreciate you guys joining me for somewhat of an impromptu live stream here on this Sunday. So want to appreciate you guys, any new subscribers to the channel. We definitely appreciate it. We appreciate any of our customers that have been ordering in these times, and it is greatly appreciative. Just bear with us as we're going through some of these seasonal changes when it comes to weather and that sort of thing. I know that there is a few that have are waiting orders, and we just have those protocols in place, so you can check more of that at SergeantTank.com if you want to. But let's not spend a whole lot of time on that. Let's get right into the topic. So when it comes into the overall effectiveness that I find, the first thing I want to look at is kind of a visual perspective when it comes to how I look at personally setting up a fish room. So before whatever area that is, you're going to have to use your imagination here, because everybody is in different climates. People are in different parts of the world. So of course, not everybody has a basement. Some people may be operating out of a barn. Some people might have like a shed or like a pole barn or a greenhouse or someplace in their house or even a warehouse or another facility. Whatever the case might be, it really doesn't necessarily matter when it comes to the overall workflow in the flow through concept that I really want to focus here first in the segment. And that is how I look at a flow through is everything runs left to right. So if anybody has ever spent any kind of give you an analogy and kind of a relationship between a workflow concept. So anybody that has ever worked in retail, for instance, or merchandising, that kind of thing, look at it from that standpoint. Most workflow, most merchandising runs most businesses left to right. It's just, for me personally, I've always found left to right flow, no matter if you're left hand dominant or right hand dominant, it really doesn't matter. Left to right, so you start there. So when you're laying out a map of how you plan on, if you have one aquarium, 50 aquariums, or 300 aquariums or more, it really doesn't matter. You first want to look at how are you going to set up your workflow. And again, if you utilize that concept of left to right workflow, so when we walk into our fish rooms, basically when you turn to the left, everything kind of starts. And then you lay it out from there. So you may be looking at a concept of, let's say you have a 10-gallon rack system there, or a 5.5-gallon rack system, or a 40 breeder, 20 longs, whatever the case might be. We're not really focusing and really caring about too much at this point of what aquarium size. It's more of the concept of the workflow. So hopefully you guys are tracking with me. And now when you're kind of zoning those areas, that's the next thing I kind of want to lead into, is when you look at the workflow from left to right, is what I look at is zones. So when I break up certain zoning throughout the fish room, so let's say, use it as an example, as soon as you walk in, to the left we have 40 longs. The next rack system, you may have 40 breeders or a rack of 10s, whatever the case might be. There's a breakage between each zone, and each zone is laid out specifically based on temperature differentials within the fish room. Because even though we, and I'm kind of jumping ahead, and I'll cover this a little bit later on, but that's why I'm mentioning that, is it is important, because even if you are controlling the ambient temperature as much as you can within reason in your fish room or fish rooms, is you want to look at those zones. So just take an infrared thermometer, check those zones, and kind of figure out where based on heat source and that type of thing, because you may be working with a group of species of fish that you plan on working with, breeding, that kind of thing, that may require a little bit warmer temperatures, maybe a little bit cooler temperatures to give them the overall thrivability. And the breakage in each zone is not only from the standpoint of temperature, it's also from the standpoint of cross-contamination or cross-contaminant. And a lot of people, when they think about the potential of cross-contamination, they're thinking solely on ick, some more basic type disease, parasites, that kind of thing. That's not actually, that's part of it, but you also want to look at the importance of cross-contamination of your overall lineage. And what I mean by that is, when we refer to, in the fish keeping world, anybody that is a fish breeder or has spent any time breeding fish, when I refer to a contaminated lineage or the potential of cross-contaminated lineage, what I mean by that is, if you're working with a family of fish, maybe from different location points, certain species of fish, that kind of thing. Again, you're going to have to use imagination here, because there's a lot of different examples, especially with endlers, certain cichlids, and the list goes on. Is, if you have all your eggs, as I've talked about before, in one basket, it could take one of those and spoil the entire thing and potentially contaminate everything. So when you're really focusing on pureness, and that's really our importance, and it has at sergeanttank.com for many years, is the importance of lineage breeding, not only to develop the best bloodlines over the longevity and the overall thrivability, but also reducing and mitigating the opportunity for a potential of cross-contaminated lineage. Fish will jump, even if you have a tank covered. All it takes is one opportunity. It could take as much as your net, picking up a fish or a group of fish and not realizing it. And even if you have lids and you think everything, again, it's all about mitigation and overall prevention is the way that I look at it. So prevent the opportunity, try to be more proactive rather than reactive. So when you're breaking up things in zones, the workflow left to right, trying to mitigate those opportunities for cross-contaminated, not only cross-contaminates when it comes to potential of parasites, bacterial issues, that type of thing, but just as important is reducing and mitigating the opportunity for cross-contaminated lineage. The other thing is, what I look at as I'm looking through a workflow from left to right, is what I find is very important, and one of the things I haven't actually seen many do, but something I've applied for many years, is coding. Coding is a very important system, not only from the standpoint of looking at your zones and how you incorporate certain coding. It's going to make your life a lot easier. We run over 140 systems just indoors, and that doesn't include outdoor stock. So you can imagine, when I'm working with 50 plus various specimens of livestock breeding projects each year, it can be overwhelming if you don't have a coding system in place. So when I'm raising up rainbow fish eggs and killifish and that kind of stuff, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. I will be covering this again in segments as I go on here in the future. I will be having a live stream with you guys. I'm going to be breaking up a lot of what I talk about in one of my presentations on methodology of fish keeping and fish breeding. Is a lot of this stuff I'm just kind of breaking up into segments for you guys. Is coding and then whatever type of software. So you can use free services. Most people have Google. So if you want to utilize Google, use Google Sheets and Google Drive. I love the fact that it's cloud service. You can pull it up on your phone. You can go to your computer, your tablet, whatever the case might be, anywhere you're at. Not only identifying and breaking it down by if you have locality on a specific fish or whatever the case might be that you're working with, but also that workflow, looking at the coding, and whatever coding you want to come up with. And it could be what I like to do personally is, so on the north side, the south side, the east, and the west side, no matter where you're at in the fish room, you can kind of then use that as an abbreviation to a rack or a display. So like for instance, let's say that I have a north side display tank. You could just put something as simple as ND1, let's say. That would tell you that it's the north side, the D is for display, and then it's tank 1, and you just kind of work down from there. And again, if you have a rack, let's say, use for example, you have a rack of 10s. As soon as you walk in, that starts your workflow from left to right. And that first zone, you start top left corner and then go across. So again, left to right, like this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth, however you have it laid out. And you also want an area for organization of your supplies. So I have organization cabinets for just breeding related supplies. Most of everything I make myself, and I'll discuss that later on in another video and show you guys more of a hands-on to save you guys a lot of money when it comes to breeding traps. And again, you guys have covered a lot of this in great detail, years back on the platform, but just want to reintroduce for anybody new, because there is a lot of new subscribers. So just bear with me, anybody that's already heard me kind of talk about this stuff quite a bit in the past, or maybe just as a refresher. Anybody new to the channel, just kind of giving you guys some insight there. I took some notes here, so I'm just trying to keep everything together. So again, just as a recap, workflow left to right, mitigate the opportunities, cross contaminants, not only from the standpoint of bacteria and parasitic issues, but also just as important, cross contaminated lineage. Talked about coding, talked about organization of supplies. So whatever you want to use, a cabinet, drawer system, keep it cost effective. You don't have to spend a lot of money on that sort of thing. You're also going to kind of going back here, when you set up a zone, you're going to want an area. I would highly suggest an area that's kind of isolated away from your main areas in your fish room. And if you have multiple areas, that more power to you. But if you don't, then you may want to create some type of wall system, something to kind of provide a little bit of a breakage. Again, it's all about prevention. You're not going to there's no guarantees obviously in any of this. It's all about prevention. Again, be more proactive rather than reactive. Try to put in some basic preventative measures to mitigate any opportunities that arise. And maybe it could be in a corner somewhere. You don't need a ton of systems. 10 gallons work absolutely phenomenal for most, not all, but most. Isolation, if you're bringing in new stock, it doesn't matter. You guys have heard me preach on this many times. I don't care who you get it from. Just isolate it and quarantine it. And quarantine doesn't mean medicate just to medicate. And again, I'm not going to go on that rant. It means simple observation phase is what it comes down to. And if you need to provide some type of medicated measures in order to take care of whatever it is that you need to take care of, then you go ahead and do so. But you have an area, that's the important thing, to kind of isolate those zones, but have an isolated area for just your quarantine section away from the rest of your fish rooms. So for us, it's in a completely different area of our fish rooms. It's completely isolated away from the rest of the stock. But hopefully you guys are kind of tracking with me up to this point. Anybody that's joining, I definitely appreciate it. You guys can watch this in the replay. I'm going to go here. I'm going to kind of stop there and give you guys just a couple of minutes here. If you have any questions, let's stay on topic. If I notice a question pertaining to kind of what I covered, then I will do my best to address it. And if I missed it, just go ahead and put it back in the chat. And at the end, I always try to give, a few minutes of questioning, just general questioning once we're done with the topic. Let's see here. Just bear with me, you guys. Just kind of quick scanning through. And I do realize that there is a bit of a delay between what I'm telling you guys by the time I see it in the chat and then I'm able to respond. So, yeah. Do you guys have any questions there as far as kind of those first few elements? I kind of feel like Bueller, if I could do it in that voice. Let's see. VB23, hello. Sharpies Models and Aquatics, hello. Jeff Rose, what's going on, buddy? Liberty Bell Cichlids, hello. Gone Wishing Aquatics, hello. How you doing, buddy? Sean, the others are just unlisted, so you can, if you have the link or if somebody shared it, obviously it isn't going to show up unlisted on the main homepage, but they should be available via a link. So what I can do, Sean, if you want, once I'm done with this, I'll just link them up for you in the description of this one. So just hold on to this link, and you're more welcome to watch it later on. So as long as you have this URL link, then you'll be all set. Let's see. All right, so it doesn't look like there's any specific questions there. So we'll just kind of keep going through here. Spacing is also important when you're going through a workflow. So again, what that spacing is, you need to obviously make sure that you're comfortable and you're able to move about. I would imagine most fish rooms aren't necessarily ADA compliant. I'm joking. So Americans with Disabilities Act is having that set footage, that gapping, but yeah, so I mean, even 2 feet, you're going to want to leave enough so you can actually maneuver. So you want to make sure when you're looking at the workflow and you're kind of flowing it out. One thing I want to put preface on is from the standpoint, no matter how many times you map it out in your head, you put it on paper, I will guaranteed, it's going to eventually change. So modular style systems is the next segue here that I want to lead into. So utilizing a modular type system, something I've, to each their own, I will put it this way. But I can tell you from running over 12 to 13 different fish rooms, I lost track over the years at this point, many different phases. I've gone from few tanks running on centralized filtration systems. I'm not going to get into that. I'm just kind of giving you a visual on continuous drip systems to isolated systems to individualized systems to smaller tanks to bigger tanks, a combination of everything in between, as you can imagine. I've been there. I've done it. I've run. Now we're kind of what's nice where it's very easy for me, just from a physical basis because of my limitations, to do a nice workflow from left to right. If you want to put a tank towards the bottom, just keep in mind the potential there. It may be a little bit more challenging for you to do water changes if you have some physical ailments that kind of limit you. Obviously, if you can kind of get them from, I recommend waist and kind of above about height, just above your eye height. You're kind of looking at as far as the top rack. But again, it really, there is no perfect remedy. The perfect thing, whatever works for you. So again, spacing, completely lost my train of thought again. I don't go off from a script, you guys. So I guess maybe that comes with age, but completely. So I talked about spacing, workflow. I know somebody's going to put it in the chat. This is comical. Oh my god! What do I even see? That's a problem. I go on these little rants, and I'm like, what the hell just happened? I have no idea. Cheers. I promise it's only water in here. It's only high quality H2O. We got Steve out in the house. How you doing, buddy? It'll come to me. Oh man. Do. Welcome to your world, yeah. Oh man. Hey, I'm not quite up there yet. Oh boy. That's funny. Well, I think that wraps it up. No, I'm just teasing. It'll come to me. I guess it wasn't that important. Who knows? Oh Lord, yeah. This is testing you guys. Anybody know what I left off on before I went on my little mini rant? Somebody's got to know. This is a test. Okay. I'm really testing you guys. Make sure you guys are following along, paying attention. Let's see. Just waiting for that delay to come through. I got high hopes. Somebody. I don't want to jump ahead here. I want to make sure I'm. This is pathetic. Thank you, buddy. And drum roll. The award goes to Mr. Jeffro with Jeffro's Fish Keeping. Followed by Mike with Fish Tank Barn. So yes, a modular type system. And I'm not going to go on a rant again, I promise. I'm not going to promise because I probably will. Instead of making man-made type setups, so if you use a metal, if you're using wood, whatever the case might be, why I recommend a modular type system. What I mean by that is something basically you can construct within a matter of minutes and deconstruct within a matter of minutes. Give or take, obviously, we're not talking about the actual tanks being on the systems, and then you guys get it. But something that you can move, because going back to what I was saying when we transitioned into this part, is just from the point of view, no matter how much you map it out, no matter how many times you map it out, on paper, in your head, you could have 100 people come and show up. Everybody's going to have their own input. You have to do what is best for you, because this is your fish room. You got to keep in mind, this is anybody else's. This is what you're going to be working in and day out. So spacing, are you going to do a modular type system using like Husky racks? Are you going to, maybe you're effective in the area of construction or woodworking, metalworking, that kind of thing, where you can create your own modular system to where you have the versatility and you don't want to buy one. Maybe you just want to say, hey, I built this. That's completely up to you, but I can tell you, having the ease and the versatility rather than everything custom built. Now, if you're going into a local fish store, if you're operating a warehouse and it's more open to the public by appointment, maybe on a regular basis, then obviously we're kind of apples to oranges here. What I'm talking about is a hobbyist type fish room or a home-based type fish room where you're not as necessarily open to the public. Then that I can talk a different. That's a whole nother conversation in and of itself because of coding requirements, having ADA compliance and that kind of stuff. So, not trying to venture off too much. Just try to focus on this is what you're going to be working in and day out. Are you going to go with a modular type setup? And I'm just using that vaguely. So you can use your imagination, whatever form of rack system you can get your hands on, depending on what part of the world that you're in. I can tell you firsthand, Husky racks, if they're set up right and leveled appropriately, they do phenomenally well. There's lots of other systems. I'm not being paid for by, sponsored by in any way. There's a lot of them I've used and I currently use. And I have a combination of the both. I'll be the first one to say. So there's certain parts of the fish room that is what it is. But I still have some versatility where I can switch up tank sizes if I need to. I can make the adjustments. That was actually built, I did before I even started the fish room in that phase of the basement many years ago. That was actually where I held in anybody that doesn't know, I have a construction background. That's what I used to do, is one of my trades. So I had everything built. It was for 18-gallon totes, that kind of thing for organization, but I built everything where you could literally park a semi-truck on top of it. And it was the perfect thing that actually held various size tanks. And I have gone through phases, but just keep in mind, no matter how much you plan it out in your head, 5, 10, 20 years down the road, and I hope you guys are still doing this, 5, 10, 20 years down the road, don't get discouraged with it. This is where I got to kind of give a pep talk and be like, hey, you're going to have your ups and downs. Things are going to happen. Don't get discouraged with it. Don't run away from it. Just tackle it head on and learn from it. And, you got to realize that you are going to make certain mistakes as you're going through these phases, no matter how long you've been doing it. You're still going to run into some challenges. First and foremost, obviously, safety. No matter what you're doing, make sure everything is safe and sound, especially with kids. So that is something you want to think about as well when it comes to your workflow. So as you're laying it out and kind of setting up your zones, is make sure that is it pet friendly? Is it kid friendly? Is it safe for others coming over and looking at it? Is it obviously safe for you as you're working in and out of it? Because again, you are going to be the one working in that area most often. So you want to think about all those things when it comes to your workflow. So yeah, I'm kind of looking here at chat. Make sure if you guys have any specific questions with regard to this, go ahead and put it in the chat. I'm at the bottom. If I missed it, just put it back in the chat. Let's see. Like Mike mentioned, it's 3 years in his fish barn. Absolutely, you're gonna change because interest will change in the hobby. I've seen Mike set up. I would say his and I's interest are pretty similar in the type of stuff we enjoy working with. And that's why I'm sure a lot of, what I'm mentioning here is things that he can familiarize himself with when it comes to that, just because of the amount of systems that he has. So again, you don't have to go out and feel as if you need to keep up with the Joneses, for a lack of better terms, and go out and get 100 tanks. As I told you guys many times on this channel from the very get-go, is it didn't happen overnight for me. And I don't, I'm not going to sit here and go through and reiterate everything, I've covered. If you want to know, if you are new to the channel, I have it all written out. We do at sergeanttank.com. You can check it out. You can understand more. If you want to get to know us a little bit more, who I am, what we do here, you can definitely check that out. But again, starting in the hobby, early 90s, and getting our house, in 2006, and looking at kind of as I was doing different remodeling type stuff. And, when I first started, I'll just put it at this. When I first started, I started out with a 7.5 gallon Fluval. And this is actually part of one of my presentations I give too. I started out with a 7.5 gallon, something to get me kind of interested back into the hobby, as I've taken, a gap there in time as far as a hiatus, just going through schooling and in life and work and everything else. I think everybody kind of goes through that one point or another in their life until you get comfortable enough where you're ready to start kind of taking that step and looking at even figuring out an area where it would be practical. And again, not everybody is in that situation where you have a basement, or you have a barn, or you have, again, just take steps. It's like a marathon. So just easy, go steady with it. You don't have to go from one, like we did a 7.5 gallon, where I was breeding thousands of Neocaridina shrimp out of a 7.5 gallon with no maintenance, because my work schedule at the time was crazy. That's all I had, but I was content with it. Every day I came home, I had on the south side of that, portion, one of our big windows, and it was getting a lot of natural light during the day, but not too much light. So a lot of natural, just microorganisms and that sort of thing, microfauna, microbacterium. Algae was growing all around, and it was easy for me to maintain because virtually there was no maintenance besides topping off, especially, with a shrimp tank. And they were you're talking thriving, they look good. You got to keep in mind at that time, not a lot of people are actually keeping dwarf shrimp in the aquarium trade, at least in our market or within the U.S. As I talked about before, early part of the 2000s, mid 2000s, you started seeing a boom in that. And then I noticed, at least in our market, about 2010, 2011, it kind of fell off. And then it slowly kind of peaked up. And now you see where, last 3 or 4 years, it has exponentially went up. So the reason I'm kind of painting that picture for you guys is be content with what you have. Enjoy it. As I always tell you guys, if you're brand new into fish keeping, you've never kept a tank in your life, I would say most of us here, especially in the chat or they're lurking, you guys have all kept a tank. You probably got a tank when you're younger. Could have been something as simple as a comet goldfish. Whatever the case might be, is be happy, be content, just enjoy it for a year and a half or two before you even get into breeding. And for me, when I got the dwarf shrimp, it was just getting a group of 10 of them. And at that time, they were very expensive. The system itself wasn't cheap. But I was content. I was really, really happy with that. And then, of course, things went on over the years to where we're at now. But again, it didn't happen overnight. So just be content. I just want to make note of that. Just be happy where you're at. If you're second guessing yourself constantly, hey, should I start a fish room? Shouldn't I start a fish room? How should I go about doing this? You may want to listen to that inner part of yourself and be like, hey, maybe I need to step back and just reevaluate, because we haven't even gone into, and I'm not going to cover this here, but maybe I can in the future when it comes to the overall efficiency and cost. How can you maximize the overall cost in, again, give or take? I think a lot of people would be surprised the amount of time where I've gotten it to a point just from doing so many of these where you're very content and it's very, very stable. And the amount of time where I don't need to necessarily spend in there, I think a lot of times the misconception is you have, this many setups. How do you keep up with it? And that's where the organization really comes in. That's where the workflow comes in. That's where setting up zones comes in. I think about that's more important to me in the long-term success, especially with breeding or raising up fish and that kind of thing, than just looking at the short term. What size tank am I going to get? I'm looking at everything else before I even worry about, hey, is this going to be a 10 gallon? Is this going to be, 20s? Is this going to be 40s? Is it going to be 75s, 55, whatever the case might be, is to make sure you obviously work within your means, make sure that you can obviously keep up with whatever you're doing, and then look at, hey, once I've kind of taken these steps, these baby steps to get to that point, how now, if I need to, could I expand into, let's say, larger systems if I want to, because now maybe your interests have changed into a different part of the hobby. Maybe now you are no longer, you want to now look at potentially marine tanks or saltwater or even brackish systems. So you want to think about all those things too, is if in the event you need to now transition into a different size tanks, is you want to think about that workflow in the event if you did have to, how hard and how challenging is it going to be if and when that time came. I find a lot of people, they get very burned out very quickly from that standpoint, where they rush into it. It's not very well planned. I've talked lots in the past on here about the importance of GFCIs, so your ground fault circuit interrupter, not a power surge protector. Again, you have to do what you're comfortable with, but you can check out videos I have talking. They are still here on the YouTube channel, or you can check that out. So safety, very, very important. Obviously, common sense, water source. I could sit here and spend hours and hours on those aspects. But right now, I just want you guys to think about workflow, organization, coding, permanent, modular, maybe a hybrid of the two. Organization of supplies, breeding supplies, food that you're going to be using, storage. Maybe you have to keep frozen foods. Maybe you're doing live foods. The mitigation of the cross-contamination, not only from the standpoint of cross-contaminants when it comes to certain parasitic issues that could happen, bacterial issues, but as important, mitigating the opportunity for cross-contaminated lineage. So if you're working with a certain group of fish where they could potentially inbreed or hybridize, you want to make sure that's why you're mitigating that as you're laying out your different zones. I think that pretty much is like a recap. I'm going to give about the last 15 minutes here, you guys. I want to thank you guys very much for listening. Hopefully you could take something away with it. Again, trying to condense all of that down into, about a 40-minute spiel with the hiccup in there where I lost my train of thought a couple of times. I appreciate the reminder. But so I'm going to turn my attention here to the chat. Again, let's keep on topic. If you have a specific question with regard to organization in the fish room, I'll do my best to address that here in the chat. Redesigned my fish room to limit the amount of tanks I could set up. I just had too many tanks. Now I'm forced to think long term when I want to buy a new type of fish. Yep, it's very important to look at all of those different areas. Just bear with me, you guys. I'm just scrolling here through chat, and I know that there is a bit of a delay. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any questions at all for me. So I'm going to give it about 2 minutes. If there's no specific questions for this, you guys, then I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I'm just trying to stay on topic, and I can take 1 or 2 questions outside of this as well, if you would like. But yeah, just trying to stay on topic here and trying to provide as much information for you guys without taking up too much of your time. Jesse HCA, how you doing, buddy? Jesse was wondering, I think you, if you're still in the chat, I think you might be directed towards me. I'm not sure. And the question was, have you ever reduced the amount of tanks you have? Absolutely. I've gone up, I've gone down, I've gone back up, and now we're to a point where, it's stable. So obviously from a business standpoint, it is a little bit different for us because I have to look at what we plan on doing, because I try to incorporate, as I've talked about this before, is very much involved in club related stuff, as well as, just hobbyist stuff in general, as well as from a business standpoint. So thinking about transitioning of what we plan on doing and that kind of stuff, obviously it is a bit different. And, as we go through any type of major changes, I always try to keep you guys updated where it could potentially affect for a certain period of time the overall website, which is sergeanttank.com. You guys can check it out. You're more than happy to just kind of, search around on the site and that kind of stuff. But yeah. Problem I'm running into is I want tanks per guppy strain, 2 5s, 2 10s. I can fit 8 5s per shell, but only 6 10s. Kind of a bummer. Yeah. So again, you have to look at, as just kind of point out the obvious. And that's good that you're actually thinking through and you're playing out those scenarios in really being as I would call it, like a practical thinker. You're looking at, is it practical for me to do this? Is it not? That sort of thing. So, Rich Andy, hello. Dan is wondering, what is the best product to write on tanks and easily erase? So many marker and gel choices. Hope you are well. Well, thanks so much. Great question. What I recommend is utilizing painter's tape, and you can use different colors painter's tape. There is certain situations where, and I've shared this with you guys in the past, and have showed different systems where it's actually written on so like a dry erase marker, but again, any water gets on that, even a permanent marker gets on that, it will over time kind of fade and it's going to run. So for me personally, I look at the bottom of the tank kind of on the black trim, assuming that you're using, even if you're using a stock tub, whatever the case might be, is somewhere on there where you can try to reduce it from getting wet. But even if the painter's tape, I find, depending on what you use, just get a good one, and that'll last you a long time. You only need a little bit, and that's where you can kind of keep notes and put it on there. But that's where the whole basis around the coding program comes in. So all you have to do is code your tank once, and then and then you can just, as your resource, go back to your Google Drive, whatever source and app that you're maintaining all of your notes, and kind of lay it out. Maybe I can show you guys sometime what I do, but again, what works for me may not necessarily be what's of interest to you guys. But not only do we put on there our zones, our tanks, what we're working with, location, if there's locale on specific stuff, generational type lineage, how many generations so everything is kind of in one place. That's why I enjoy like a Drive, like a cloud service, so you can really pull it up anywhere if you have a tablet, if you have a phone. But my first recommendation, just from doing this for so many years now and doing permanent marker, you can use permanent marker. The easy way to do that is have a dry erase marker on hand. You just retrace it with a dry erase marker and wipe it off. It's that simple. So you can use permanent markers, on a glass tank. It'll come off just fine. But you don't even necessarily, you could sit there and scrub and eventually it's going to come off. But that's the easiest way. But my best recommendation is painter's tape. I wouldn't use Scotch tape. I wouldn't use any type of other tape besides painter's tape, because it peels right off, and it's good enough where it can just stick right on the tank. So, but yeah. Let's see. Another option, absolutely, I've used those a lot too, is paint markers. So again, there is a lot of options, but I really want to stick to my response would be is painter's tape, but even more so important than that is to code your tanks. If you guys are just popping in here, you can check out the beginning, and I kind of went through that a little bit more. However, you can code it. And coding, again, I will cover this in a different video when it comes to coding. If you're working with various fish, especially egg depositing type specimens where you're retrieving the eggs and you're hatching those out, or even offspring, that sort of thing. It doesn't necessarily just have to be egg depositors, but is how we go about coding for various livestock, especially with grow outs, to maximize and to ensure that you're maintaining efficiency there and not getting things mixed up. But yeah. But again, you have to do, what you feel comfortable with doing, what works best for you in the end. But great question. As Sean mentioned, enjoys the painter's tape as well. So yeah. All right. Take one more question, you guys. If you have one, then we'll wrap this up. So I want to thank everybody for joining on the impromptu stream. Hopefully you can take something away from it. And again, just bear with me. There's always a delay here in the chat. Shaw mentioned coding the tanks is what I'm working on now. Since when I'm done with the fish shed will be 50 or 60 tanks. Absolutely. Yep. Glad to see you're going in that direction, and congratulations on your endeavors within the shed in that process. So I wish you all the best to you. Q Aquatics, how are you? Great seeing you. And if I missed anybody in the chat, I apologize. I am at the bottom here, and we are coming up on that time where we're going to be wrapping things up. So I didn't see any other questions. I'm sure as soon as I end this, then there'll probably be one that will come through. But again, want to thank you guys very much. If you haven't done so already, up to this point, if you do enjoy this content, go ahead and hit the like button. You feel free to share it out. If you aren't subscribed, I encourage you to do so. I do plan on putting out more content for you guys here on the channel, kind of once I get back into that workflow here on YouTube. So I want to thank you guys so much for joining on another live stream, and we will talk to you guys on the next one.